Welcome, baseball fans, to Week 20 of Major League Baseball Power Rankings, brought to you by State of MLB. I'm your host, Dave. Welcome to this week's edition. We've had some interesting things going on this week. When I first started this Power Rankings beginning of the year, I pretty much made the assumption that if you take the strength of the field, that you were probably going to have all of your contenders are going to be a top 10, maybe one or two would bleed over here, and then these would all be a wash with teams that are rebuilding and just their season was over. What it turns out to be is quite a phenomenon, actually. As you'll see through power rankings here, you'll see teams down here that are very much in the playoff spot. You'll also see teams up here that are so out of the playoffs it's not even funny. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into some stuff. Another interesting thing this year is that after the trade deadline, July 31st, you used to have a waiver deadline of September, end of August. Then you'd have your call-ups from your minor leagues where their season was over, so they contribute to the Major League Club and help teams get some experience for teams that are out of the playoffs and maybe help out some teams that are in the playoff run. With the elimination of the waiver deadline, everyone assumed, okay, that means that July 31st, there'll be no more players moving around. Well, there's a little caveat to that. And now you have the DFA, designated for assignment. If a team no longer has desire to keep a player, or if they want to move a player back down to the minor leagues, and they're out of options, which we can get into in a future video what options are all about, they have to go. They go on the kind of the waiver line, and then anybody out there checking that every day can say, "Hey, this team just put up this player. Let me pick him up." And they can negotiate and go from there. So you're still going to see players moving between teams because they've been DFA'd from their original team, and somebody else has picked up on them. Where it's different is the fact that that is very much subject to a team that said, "Okay, we're done with this guy. He's not. It's like you're not going to find your top tier talent like your Glory Klubers, your Corey Klubers, or your Keuchels, or your other top tier players get DFA'd. You're going to see players with whom aren't making it with their team end up on this line. Now, a lot of teams are under the impression that because you do that, maybe a change of atmosphere, maybe different coaches will help bring the guy around. Okay, so before I get onto a huge rant, major tangent, and away from this, let's go ahead and get into our power rankings here. And if you want to hear more about this whole DFA stuff and trades and all this other jazz, please leave your comments and opinions in the section below, and I will be delighted to do a video on how all that works out. So, going into this, coming in at number 30 is the Detroit Tigers. And they, like the next two teams, their season's done. They're playing spoiler to the best of their ability, and they're getting players experience, seeing what they can do in the off-season. Much like Baltimore, which, unlike Detroit, is surprisingly doing better than Detroit despite the fact that they are in an absolutely brutal division. Yes, Detroit still has to compete with Minnesota and Cleveland, but the Baltimore Orioles have to deal with all three of New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox, and the Tampa Bay Rays, all three that are in the playoff hunt. And despite that, they're still above Detroit, which just shows you how much rebuilding Detroit's doing. Coming at number 28, the Miami Marlins have not dropped at all, but they went from climbing up earlier in the season to kind of falling back into their spot. I thought that with a change of direction that the managers were giving the players, that they were starting to spark, and maybe they'd do something, and maybe they'd rise at least out of the cellar. Not so much. Having a 1-5 week, they all went in and took a game from LA Dodgers. Imagine that. I mean, granted, every great team can have bad days. It's just that the Miami Marlins seem to shock teams sometimes. They don't necessarily win the series per se, unless it's like, Philadelphia or Atlanta. But when it comes to playing teams like Milwaukee or LA or et cetera, they might not win a series, but they'll definitely keep it competitive, and they won't let you sweep them. Coming in at number 27, the Kansas City Royals. The Royals played St. Louis and New York this week. They dropped 2 spots. A team that's very much rebuilding, like the rest of these group here. In that the thing is, they have offloaded talent the last couple of years that would have them a lot higher. Maybe it's because they're trying to develop their new talent. Would be my best guess. Coming in at 26, the Seattle Mariners. Now, one thing you'll note is with the points here, as discussed in previous videos, and welcome to the channel, all new subscribers. We had a few people come in this week. So to give you an idea of the point system here is, the reality of the matter is that Major League Baseball and ESPN, their rankings are highly subjective based upon what the analysts think or feel. So I decided to take a very objective approach and say, let's do this based upon a point system. 9-inning win is 3 points, a 9-inning loss is 0 points, and if they go into extra innings, you split the 3 points with the winner getting the 2 and the loser getting the 1. So having said that, I said, okay, you're going to have situations where you have tiebreakers. Well, let's go ahead and use that week's run differential as tiebreaker, because for the offensive-minded players who love home runs and a lot of scoring, you take that, and then for defensive-minded fans who love a lot of defense and pitcher's duels, you subtract the runs given up from the runs gained, and you have your run differential. Now, what do you have when you take 2 teams that have identical points here? Well, what you do in this case is I would normally go to the full season run differential, okay? However, because this is the end of the season, and because these two teams are so far out of the playoffs, they're both in spoiler mode, and because over the past month I've been talking about how Seattle has been trying to get lower, I decided let's have a little bit of fun with this, and realistically speaking, they are essentially tied, so Dave, having a little bit of fun, said, okay, Seattle, I'm going to help you out and get a little bit lower and let you be 26. Having said that, the Pittsburgh Pirates have the exact same rank and points as Seattle, coming at 25. And this is a team that has provided me so much fun as an objective fan of the game, and probably so much agony to Pittsburgh Pirates fans because they are so extremely hot and cold. You never know which Pittsburgh team is going to show up. And this week is no exception, going 2-1 against LA and 1-1 against Chicago, finishing this the week off at 3-3. Coming in at number 24, the Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays are a bunch of Hall of Famer sons, with which I think will definitely help make Toronto competitive in years to come. This year, they're all rookies. They all need experience. A lot of them need defensive support. They all can hit. Take it up against any team, and they're gonna score some runs in there somewhere. Unless you run into like Ryu or Kershaw or somebody else like that, then it might be a little more difficult. But they're gonna get their hits in there. And for those of you out there who are Toronto Blue Jays fans, welcome to the channel. As much as I love all the teams, I have to be completely objective and fair to everybody. Having said that, the Toronto Blue Jays are very much in the frameworks of building a future contender. And in the meantime, you get to see how all the wonderful bats of their Hall of Famer sons putting on a show. They still need work on their defense. However, Bo Bichette, he is doing phenomenal. His defense is like, oh my God. If this guy came in at the beginning of the year, he would have been on the All-Star team. There's no question about it. So you got a real prize in that guy. I'm sorry it took him so long to bring him up, but he's definitely raising some eyebrows in Toronto. Coming in number 23, the Chicago White Sox. Chicago had a very interesting week. They took 2 out of 3 from the powerhouse in the West, being the Houston Astros. And I give you a round of applause, Chicago. Wonderful work. Great job. No one saw it coming. No one saw it coming, and yet you did it anyway. Granted, you had home field advantage, but with the way your season's been going, anybody, home or away, if you can take 2 out of 3 from a team like New York, like Boston, like Houston, like your Cleveland, like your Atlantas, I mean, hats off to you, man. Hats off. Wonderful work. Coming in at number 22, the Colorado Rockies. This was pegged originally as my surprise wild card team. I was going to upset the Dodgers in the first round. I'll own it. It was fun. I thought I got the idea from the fact that the first series in Colorado, they took 2 out of 3 from the LA Dodgers, and the Dodgers had been more or less unstoppable up to that point, including walk-off wins and everything. They had like 4 walk-off wins prior to that series against Colorado, so I thought, okay, Colorado was the first team to go 7-0 this year, and they showed some mettle at home against LA. They have since shown quite the opposite, and they have taken themselves completely out of the playoff picture, but I'll go ahead and own that one. I had some fun with that, made a wild prediction, and got proved massively wrong. Coming in at 21, the San Diego Padres. This is another team with which I said at the beginning of the year, with the Hosmer, with Machado, with everybody else they've got, this was going to be a team on the rise. Let's see what they can do. Can they contend this year? Well, sitting at 5th spot in their division, not so much this year. We'll see what they do in the offseason and see if they become contenders next year. This year, they went, this week, they went 1-2 against Tampa and 1-1 against Philadelphia. Not exactly all-star caliber delivery there on the field, going 2-4. Hence, they have got themselves in the number 21 spot, same spot as last week. But now they're in just plenty spoiler mode. You got a lot of great pieces in there. They haven't played together this season. Now they're in spoiler mode. Let's see what they can do to help contending teams to come in and play them to miss the playoffs. Coming in, number 20, a surprise team for contention. It's all the way down here, and yet they're 2.5 games out of the second wild card for the National League. This is a team with which I kind of figured, okay, when they decided not to sub Bumgarner because they started winning some games. I said, okay, let's see what happens. Well, they've had some up and down weeks, granted, but they're in contention. They're 2.5 out with 6 games left to go. They're absolutely in the conversation. Honestly, anybody beyond 5 games out, I didn't even record where they stood in the wild card standings. As you get closer to the September, as you get closer to the playoffs, the smaller that gap is going to be. For example, if you're 10 games out, you're not going to catch up unless a whole bunch of teams have massive collapses. It's just not going to happen. And I kind of, as we approach the end of August, said, okay, 5 runs back or more, it's really a long shot. Is it impossible? No. But it's highly unlikely. And when you're under 10% probability, not even going to list it this week. So they are 2.5 games back. They're definitely in the conversation. They're 2 games over 500. And they went 1-1 against Oakland and 3-0 against Arizona. They're definitely showing that they want to be in the conversation and they want to pursue the wild card. They're in that conversation despite the fact they're all the way down here. Now, having said that, they're also have the benefit of being in the National League, where you've got 6 teams fighting for 2 wild card spots. Not so much in the American League, where you have a lot of teams that are just not in the conversation. There's much wider gap there. Hence, you have a team in contention and then a team above that with whom, if you the Rangers are not playoff bound, but yet their performance on the field has ranked them higher by a point. So, another thing to consider with all these points is the fact that you're going to have teams with which you might argue should be higher or lower. Bear in mind that the points punish teams for not finishing off a 9-inning victory by giving away a point. And if you don't win in extra innings, instead of losing all 3 points, you still walk away with a point. So that the 2-1 extra inning point differential definitely is a divider in the top 10 here, where you've got teams are like, well, why are they higher or lower when they're so close together? It's because those extra inning wins and losses, they make a difference. They are fewer points than a 9-inning win. That at one point, that 2-point differential in that extra inning game makes a difference on the back end here. So, coming in at number 18, the Cincinnati Reds. The Reds, not even in the playoff conversation. They're probably within 10, but the National League is so tight that it's just like, do you really want to go beyond 5? They'd have to leapfrog so many teams to get up there. And after going 0-3 against Washington, they then rebound and take 2 out of 3 against the division rival and division leader St. Louis Cardinals. So as much as I think it would be a nice fairy tale ending for them to make the playoffs, they're just too far out. They've got too many teams to climb over. Coming in number 17, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They, however, come in at 4.5 games back of the wild card, being 2 games below 500. They're in the conversation, but not by much. They did, however, go 2-1 against Colorado, but then they laid an egg going 0-3 against San Francisco. It's a team that they're just on the brink of, are you contending or are you not contending? Of the 6 teams fighting for 2 spots, this is the farthest one down at 4.5 back of the second wild card. It's possible, but you're going to need a lot more consistency to contend at that level. When you've got, let's see here, the Cubs, you've got the Brewers, you've got the Mets, you've got the Phillies, the Giants, a lot of teams to climb over. Now, interestingly enough, the Giants are 2.5 back, they're 4.5 back. So, why is it that Arizona has 182 points, 176 points? Comes back down to your extra inning points totals. They've had more extra inning games than the Arizona Diamondbacks. And because the Diamondbacks have had fewer extra inning games, they've managed to accumulate 6 more points than the Giants. Now, granted, on the standings, as far as those are concerned, yes, the Giants being closer to the wild card would definitely technically rank above the Arizona Diamondbacks, but this is based upon points, not about regular season record here. So that's where things get interesting with how the point structure dictates the power rankings there. You could absolutely make the argument that San Francisco deserves to be higher. But this is where those extra inning games make life much more interesting. Coming in, number 16, the LA Angels of Anaheim. Not even in the playoff conversation, and they did go 1-2 against Pittsburgh and 2-1 against the Chicago White Sox. Nothing to write home about. They beat a poor team, and they lost to a very hot and cold team. So they're in 16. They're very, very much in the middle of the pack, and in the AL terms, they're not even in the competition for the playoffs. They have a wonderful opportunity to play spoiler, however, so let's see how that goes. Coming in number 15, the National League Central leading St. Louis Cardinals. What I find quite interesting about this is the fact that you have a division leader that is number 15. You will not find that on ESPN. You will not find that in Major League Baseball. But it is based upon points which are distributed through the 9-inning wins and extra inning wins versus losses here. So, do I suspect that if they're going to win the Central, they're going to end up down here this far? No, I really don't. I think as they establish themselves as the division crown as they get closer to the end of the season, they're definitely going to rise up. And while they did fall in rank this week, if you're going to be a division leader, I totally see you eventually coming up here by the end of the season. We'll see how that shakes out. In the meantime, I do find it quite fascinating the fact that the objective point system that has been constructed for the power rankings does lead what is this week a division leader all the way down to 15. It's all about play on the field, though. It's all about play on the field. Coming in at number 14, the Milwaukee Brewers. Milwaukee is 1 game out of the wild card race. They're up to this week. After going 1-1 against Minnesota and 1-1 against Washington, they are trying to be in a competition. They're definitely closer than most to the wild card. I mean, they're only trailing a couple teams here to get into the wild card picture. This is a team with which the beginning of the year I had them up here because they were kicking it. They were number one, and they're still in a dogfight with the Chicago Cubs. However, the Chicago Cubs are no longer in first place because they're both trailing St. Louis. I just find it absolutely fascinating, the fact that you have a Central Division leader below both the Milwaukee Brewers and the Chicago Cubs, which are below them in the rankings. It's an interesting dynamic, and I think it's a lot of fun to keep track of how that follows through. Coming in number 13, the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies are one game out of the playoff spot, much like the Milwaukee Brewers. They're in the dead heat of it, but they're very much in the competition, and the Philadelphia Phillies have also had a very good week. Granted, they had home field advantage, but taking 3 games out of the Chicago Cubs and then splitting in is no laughing matter. They did what they had to do. They took care of business, and they took it against a team that's very much who has a second wild card spot right now. They are trying to catch the Cubs for that wild card spot. Taking 3 games from them is definitely the way to do that. You gotta love the head-to-head competition. You gotta love being able to show you deserve to be there by beating the team that you're chasing, and they did in a 3-game sweep. So way to go, Philadelphia! Way to go! Wonderful work. Keep up the good job. Yeah, you went 1-1 against the Padres, but they're not in playoff contention. They're just playing spoiler at that point. You gotta keep your head up and remember that no matter who you're playing, you gotta put your best foot forward. Don't take anybody for granted. You're gonna have situations like a split series against the Padres. Coming in number 12, the New York Mets. The Mets are 2 games out of playoffs, so they are definitely behind the Philadelphia Phillies and the Milwaukee Brewers. But based upon the fact that they've had more regular season 9-inning wins than both of these two, they both had quite a share of extra inning games. They had some real dogfights, some real classics, and I love it. It was great baseball, but those not extra inning wins and losses definitely caused them to lose ground in these power rankings compared to a team that has had more 9-inning wins, like the New York Mets. Coming in at number 11, the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs behind a team that is built with Hendricks, with Lester, with Joe Madden at the helm, and so much other talent there. I had them pegged the top 10 to finish off the season, and since they've fallen now down below St. Louis, and after having lost 3 games to Philadelphia this week, have definitely fallen out of the top 10 for this power rankings. They're a team with which they had a bad week. They lost to a team that's chasing them. You can't do that. At the same time, they're a very resilient team. Joe Madden is like Terry Francona. They're phenomenal at getting the best out of players and shrugging off bad games and moving forward. Hats off to them. I would not be surprised that if they don't make this a dogfight for the division crown here. And absolutely nothing is missettled. Between Chicago, Milwaukee, and St. Louis, nothing is settled. Not to mention the fact that there's still an outside chance that Cincinnati could play a spoiler or give people a run for their money. It's a long shot, especially with so many teams above them, but that's what makes baseball so much fun. So, now, we are into the top 10. Everyone loves a top 10. I love a top 10. And that's what ESPN, MLB, and others spend so much time on. Who are your top 10 best teams in baseball? Well, let's get into it, shall we? Coming in number 10, the Boston Red Sox, who, in my opinion, really shouldn't have any business being in the top 10, but they had a decent week going 4-2, taking 2-3 against Cleveland, taking 2 against Baltimore. Yes, the lonely Baltimore Orioles, the same team that just got swept from both at home and away by the New York Yankees. They didn't drop a couple to Boston. They're probably going to get swept on Sunday. Do they deserve to be in number 10 spot? Honestly, I think their season is over. I didn't even rank where they listed in the power rankings. It's well over 5 games out. They're not really gonna. They're going to They had just a fallback year after winning the World Series last year. Their pitching never came around. Their hitting was inconsistent. They never got enough going. They did rise all the way down here to all the way up here, and I do absolutely no question. My hats off to them. They definitely put up a fight. But at the same time, after they got swept at home or in New York by the Yankees, following taking 3 out of 4 from the Yankees, I felt okay. They now had a chance to try and get a game or turn tables and try and get back into the fight. But when you're over 10 games back in your division and then you get swept by the Yankees, yeah, your season's over. Are they within striking distance? About as much as the Reds are. It's unlikely. Is that possible? Sure. Mathematically speaking, the probabilities are below 10%, not going to happen. And yet, despite that, they're in the top 10 based upon the points they've accumulated from 9 inning wins and overtime points. Coming in number 9, the Washington Nationals. The Nationals are a game and a half up on the second wild card. So they're in the first wild card spot in the playoff, and today they will be hosting the wild card game. And they're in the same spot as last week, being a 9th spot here after going 3-0 against Cincinnati and splitting against Milwaukee. And just to give you the best team this week was 7-1. The worst team was 1-6. And yes, the Baltimore Orioles was one of those teams, but I'll cover them when I get to the other team that won 1-6 this week. So we can do kind of a combined worst team of the week. The Washington Nationals are very much in the playoff picture. They own the first wild card spot. I just don't see them catching the Atlanta Braves for the division. I really don't. Same time, can they win in a wild card game? I right now don't give them the favorability to do so, despite the fact that they are in the first wildcard spot. Is it possible? Sure. I haven't seen the strength from them that I would expect from a contender to go deep into playoffs. Having said that, anything's possible, and they are in prime condition to host, which is always what you want. Hosting, however, doesn't guarantee you anything. So we'll see what happens, but for this week, they were number 9. Coming at number 8, the Atlanta Braves. Talk about a team that should be higher, and if I was being subjective about it, it would absolutely be above 5. This team has really made a heck of a season on themselves. They're at 73-52. They own the East. They just own it. No one can catch them. They can probably coast all the way to a division crown, but they do fall one spot because it's based upon objective metrics. And after taking 2 out of 3 from the New York Mets and splitting against the LA Dodgers, unfortunately they did get eclipsed for the rankings. They did drop 1 spot. Despite that, I have very high hopes for the Atlanta Braves. I think they'll do phenomenal. I'm looking forward to seeing who they end up playing in the wild card in the divisional round. They won't have to deal with the wild card because the LA Dodgers have definitely got a lock seal on that on the number 1 seed. So the LA Dodgers will definitely host the wild card, but they get to play whoever comes in as the central winner between the Brewers, St. Louis, and Chicago Cubs. I've spoken with the Braves, and they're like, well, I'm just waiting to see who they get to beat, because Braves fans have every reason to feel completely confident that no matter who they end up playing, they're going to win. Can they handle themselves against the LA Dodgers? We'll see. But for this week, I personally just disappointed they didn't rank higher. I'm sure a lot of Braves fans are too. But the metrics are the metrics. Coming at number 7, the wild card. Half game out of the second wild card, Oakland Athletics, based upon points, are 71-52. So even though the Braves have 2 more wins than the Oakland Athletics, the Braves have played more overtime games and therefore have fewer points than the Oakland Athletics, and therefore the Athletics, based upon these metrics, get to rank higher. So that's how that shakes out. Same time, the Oakland Athletics are really kind of becoming quite impressive in the playoff chase here. They become a team that, while they're a half game out of the second wild card, they're a team that I would not be surprised to be in that conversation. to actually take over one of those wild card spots, which are currently owned by the Rays um, and the Indians. So uh, if they play us today, they would be sitting on the couch. But I have absolute fundamental belief that whoever loses the Central Crown will end up in the first wild card spot where the Cleveland Indians currently reside. Now it's a matter of can the Oakland Athletics catch the Tampa Bay Rays, with whom are currently holding that second wild card spot at 72 wins. The Oakland Athletics sitting at 71 wins, are only a game out. More technically speaking, what is it, like half game out of the second wild card. I think that's a coin toss, honestly, between the Tampa Bay Rays and the Oakland Athletics. They're both playing very, very well, and they're definitely going to be a challenge to whoever they end up playing in the wild card. Coming in at number 6, speaking of the wild card, the Tampa Bay Rays own that second wild card, and they have deservedly so. They've been in the top 5 for most of the season there. They've got, between Charlie Morton, Blake Snell, and their opener strategy, they've had a phenomenal season. Tip your hats to them. They're doing a phenomenal job. I absolutely give them all the credit in the world for the wonderful work this year. But they have a little bit of weakness. Playing home games has been their Achilles heel, unfortunately. For some reason, playing in Tropicana has not played out well for them. Having said that, they do go on the road this week and take 2 out of 3 from San Diego. They come home and they let the Detroit Tigers beat them up, splitting the first 2 games of the series. It's one of those things where Tampa Bay, I mean, you almost want them to be the second wild card if they're going to go at all, because they need those road games. They need those road games. If they hosted the wild card, I think I see them losing. If they go on the road, there's a whole other conversation. And then, of course, they go on the road to their number 1 spot, which is currently the Yankees for the American League. It could be Minnesota, could be Cleveland, could be Houston, could be anybody by the end of the season. But if they go on the road to those teams, they definitely stand a much better chance than if they are at home. Speaking of contenders, coming at number 5, the Cleveland Indians, with which are currently in the process. They're going to split. They're playing a 4-game set against the Yankees in New York. They took the first game, dropped the second 2, and with Clevenger going today against Sabathia, on paper, that is 1,000% Indians win, no questions asked. And honestly, Clevenger would have to have a bad game. The Sabathia would have to have a good game. You'd have to have some surprises in the field, whether it's errors or home runs or what have you. But honestly, looking off the outside in, I always say this one is definitely going to end up being a split, where Cleveland taking the final game of that set and then moving on to the new week. They are 1 game up on the wild card, and I think honestly they've got their sights set on the division, and the Minnesota Twins are not helping themselves in that matter. So I think that even though the Twins have had a much better, I would say much better lineup with their power, the trade deadline of getting rid of Trevor Bauer for some more bats has definitely played in their favor. That definitely has some depth. I think the Twins have a lot to worry about with the level of depth and the management of the Indians. If I were to guess, I would definitely say the Indians end up winning the division, and then go and play, I guess, Houston in the wild card. And I remember speaking back when Minnesota had such a large lead on the Central, and it would look like a shoe that they were going to end up playing Houston. I said good luck against Houston because they're a very strong team. Well, this is what happens here, because if Minnesota falls into the wild card and the Cleveland Indians end up taking the division, I think that's a whole new conversation against Houston, because they are a lot deeper, they have a lot more potential, and would definitely give Houston much more room for their money, especially after Houston had a rough week in Oakland this week. So, having said that, speaking of the Twins, they are still the Central leading team. They are a team with which I'm hoping that because their gap has closed, that provides a lot of pressure for them, and they get their act together. They have definitely had a rough spout, having completely lost their 10-game lead over the Central. that does not kill them per se, as far as they're still own the Central Division, but not by much. And hopefully that lets a fire under the butts and they figure out whatever ails them in defense and pitching and what have you. I don't see a lot of weaknesses in the lineup. They definitely have a lot of power there. But they are definitely at the point where they've got a serious threat chasing them here. And I would not be surprised if they don't shape up to be sitting in the wild card spot, which is an ugly position, especially for a team that has been so strong all year and had definitely a strong run in the middle of the year. Coming in at number 3, these Houston Astros have a virtual lock on the American League West, despite the fact that they just got their butts whooped by the Oakland Athletics, and they, like the Orioles, share the absolute worst record this week, going 1-6. Despite that, they have had a nice cushion on the division. They're going. Getting swept by the Oakland does not hurt them in any way, shape, or form towards the playoffs. It does, however, hurt their chances to take that wild card, that number 1 spot. They do fall a first 2 games behind the Yankees for the number 1 seed in the AL, and also puts them closer in conversation for the hosting the divisional game there. I definitely see them at this point hosting the divisional game against the Central winners. But they can't just rest in the Royals here. They have to take every game like their lives depend on it. They have to have that fire in their belly, like they did in the beginning of the season when they were just taking names, kicking butt up and down the field, up and down the street. They can't just rest on the fact they are a very good team. They have to keep up the fight, especially with the playoffs coming up here. You're going into the playoffs, approaching the playoff season here in about 6 weeks, where it's win or go home. I mean, do you want that chance to get back to the World Series and to win another championship, whether it's against the Dodgers or whomever? You gotta get there first. And if you relax too much, you're not going to be there. Now, you can complain about injuries all you want, but there are teams who have suffered worse injuries than you have and are outperforming at this point. So, you're still every bit the danger and the favorite that you ever were, but you can't rest on your Royals. You've got to keep it going, especially with the dog days of summer winding down and going into the playoff race in September. It's time to own your division and take that crown by a wide margin and show you still own this. Coming in, number 2, the Los Angeles Dodgers, the perennial powerhouse of the season. The Dodgers actually managed to get eclipsed in points here and fall to number 2 spot. It does not diminish the fact that they are in a dogfight for the number 1 best seed in the majors. But at this point in time, it doesn't really matter much. It looks like they can play anywhere, home or on the road. When it comes to the World Series, they still have to get there. But they are the absolute favorites to get there. They have been extremely deep. Their minor league prospects come up and have contributed in a major way. My concern are with Kershaw. He's not played well in the playoffs, but he's a regular season dominant player. He reminds me of Dan Marino, where he would play extremely dominant seasons, but couldn't get the job done in the playoffs. Having said that, he's one player. It takes an entire team to win. And they definitely have the depth, they definitely have the power, they definitely have the pitching to do that. Kershaw isn't even the league leading pitcher. Ryu is, and he had a bad game last night, but he gets to redeem himself next week when he gets to host the New York Yankees, coming at number 1. The Yankees have been absolutely impressive this year. They have taken a slew, a major league leading volume of injuries, and despite that, with all their depth, they have managed to hang in there, managed to own their division, managed to create a 10-15 gap for their first place leading, and now they've managed to eclipse the LA Dodgers for the best record in baseball. Imagine that. Wow. I mean, they just have the star power up and down the lineup. While their weakness still continues to be starting pitching, it hasn't stopped them from taking names and kicking butt. They had a phenomenal year, and they are now it's not a matter of whether they're going to win the division. Now it's a matter of what seed they're going to be in. Right now, between Cleveland, Minnesota, and Houston, it looks like they're going to be number one spot, but nothing is guaranteed. You still have to play one game at a time and seal the deal. So I want to know what all of you think about what I think. Please leave your comments and thoughts in the section below. Let me know what you think about the power rankings, where teams rank, if you think somebody should be higher or lower. Give me your justification for such, and I would love to banter with you about that. If you just happen to come across this video through YouTube or Google, please hit like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. If you are new to the sport and you want to learn more about it, I fully welcome your questions. I would love to hear more about it. I would love to know what content you would like to hear more about in postseason, or I should say off-season videos, to help bring up to speed and teach you more about the game. For those who are avid followers of over 30 years like I am, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about who's going to be stars next year, who could have done better, what changes could have been made, etc. Whatever you want. It's all good. Love to talk baseball all day long, and I love being able to provide this content to all of you. And as always, thank you for watching. Enjoy the games. Have a great week.